Hi, I'm the Guitar Trooper, YouTube's favorite old guy. You know those songs that make you want to scream, but not in a good way? You know, the songs that went to the top 10 or even number 1 that you heard once and then again and finally can't stand to hear them anymore? The follow are some of the songs of the 70s that I deem to be basically a waste of recording technology, even though they were all massive hits, so clearly a lot of you like them. Okay, a disclaimer up front. I went out of my way here to avoid slamming disco recordings per se because of the following. Some of you probably know that I was a disco DJ in the mid to late 70s, and that job exposed me to more senseless recording music in a week than most club goers would get in 3 months. Therefore, I have a visceral negative reaction to a great many disco recordings. I have endeavored, however, to put that prejudice aside. Well, for this video anyway. But it wasn't easy. If I didn't suppress it, then this thing would probably run an hour or more. Number 10, Crocodile Rock, Elton John. Released 27th of October 1972 in the UK and 20th November 1972 in the US. Crocodile Rock, written by hit-making team Elton John and Bernie Taupin, was the pre-release single from his forthcoming 1973 album, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. On February 3rd, 73, this gem of a song became Elton John's first U.S. #1 single, and it parked at that position for 3 consecutive weeks. The whole objective of this recording was to poke fun at early rock and roll, from the goofy organ riffs carefully selected from other far less irritating voices that could be made on the same Farfisa organ, to the nostalgic references in the lyrics,
while the other kids are rocking round the clock, we were hopping and bopping
to Elton John's falsetto singing during the bridge, they were all designed as oral cues to early R&R records. And I get it. From that perspective, they did a good job. But I still don't like it. What's really funny to me about Crocodile Rock is that even with all of the effort that went into it, and given the way that it sold, neither Elton John nor Bernie Taupin liked the song either. Elton John, shunning his desire to let the song go, continued playing it in live shows solely because of the fans' expectation to hear it. Bernie said in a 2011 Esquire interview that it's, quote, a strange dichotomy because I don't mind having created it, but it's not something I would listen to, end quote. Probably needless to say as well, there were radio DJs who likewise came to loathe the song because they had to play it so often during the height of its popularity. It spawned a lawsuit or two claiming use of elements of other songs, but the complaints were settled out of court. At least some of the reason for that had to be the fact that the attorneys didn't want to say the words Crocodile Rock in court. All of that being said, it did make a ton of money. It also distinguished itself by being the first MCA label single, MCA's first #1, as well as Elton John's first #1. Undeniably successful. Personally, though, I was glad when his popularity curve was on the downswing. Number 9, Do Ya Think I'm Sexy? Rod Stewart. Released November 1978 in the UK, February 79 in the US. This was a joint venture between Stewart, Carmen Appice, and Dwayne Hitchings, allegedly plagiarizing a few other songs along the way, specifically the melody from the song Taj Mahal by George Benjor, and the string arrangement from the song If You Want My Love, Put Something Down on It by Bobby Womack.
That's why I'm telling you.
Also, guitarist Jim Cregan, who also recorded with the Rolling Stones, was pretty sure that it was a ripoff of the Stones song Miss You. Well, conscious use or not, the song took on a life of its own after publication in late 1978, giving rise to its number one spot in the UK in November of 78 and a berth at the top of the US Billboard Hot 100 in February of 79. It also topped the charts in Canada for 4 weeks and in Australia for 2 weeks. By any measure, a smash hit. To their credit, royalties from this song were donated to the United Nations Children's Fund, and Stewart performed the song at the Music for UNICEF concert at the United Nations General Assembly in January of 1979. Good move. Number 8, Billy, Don't Be a Hero, released February 1974 by Paper Lace in the UK and April 1974 by Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods in the US. The song was composed by 2 British songwriters, Mitch Murray and Peter Collender. It was Peter Collender that penned How Do You Do It, the song that was reluctantly first recorded by the Beatles at the insistence of George Martin, but not released by them in deference to Love Me Do, but finally becoming a hit for another of Brian Epstein's bands, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Anyway, back to the hit at hand. Although the reference is never made in the song, many listeners thought that it was about the Vietnam War, which proved to be false, as the setting was actually during the American Civil War. The morose lyrics are what put me off, as death is not one of my favorite subjects to sing about. Nevertheless, it was a hit for both artists, Paper Lace's version going to number 1 in the UK and in Australia in March of 74, while the Bo Donaldson version went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US in June of 74. The US version sold like crazy and was worth 3.5 million copies. I didn't own one, though. Number 7, The Night Chicago Died, Paper Lace, released 15th of June 1974. So here we go again. This hit song, which followed Billy Don't Be a Hero, also by Paper Lace, reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for a week in 74, number 3 in the UK charts, and number 2 in Canada. As was Billy Don't Be a Hero, this was by songwriters Mitch Murray and Peter Collender. One of the earmarks of the early 70s pop music was the super ballad, with lyrics of excruciating detail. Such was this piece. Although somewhat based upon the gangland incident known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the lyrics depict a totally fictional and historically inaccurate shootout between the Chicago police and some associates of Al Capone, from the perspective of the son of a Chicago police officer. Personally, the historical authenticity of the lyrics is of little consequence to me. I just don't like the song. I don't know why exactly. Maybe it's just because of the way it sounds. According to History.com, The Night Chicago Died was never intended for the U.S. market, and yet managed to make it there somehow and become a number 1. Despite its popularity in the States, though, Paper Lace was forbidden to perform it there because of contractual issues. We do know that Paper Lace sent a copy of the song to the mayor of Chicago, Richard Daley, who was evidently repulsed by it. A member of Daley's staff is quoted as saying that Paper Lace should, quote, jump in the Chicago River, placing your heads underwater 3 times and surfacing twice. Pray tell us, are you nuts? Unquote. Number 6, Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be Alright, Rod Stewart. Controversial at its release, due to lyrics that would make any conservative mom faint, Tonight's the Night hit the street in May of 1976 worldwide except in the U.S., which was delayed until September. Rod Stewart actually did write the lyrics for this song rather than licensing them from someone else. The perhaps surprising origin of the lyrics came about one evening while Rod was at Dan Peek's home studio, that's Dan Peek of the group America, where Dan demonstrated for Rod a working version of his song Today's the Day, as it was not yet finished, and he wanted Rod's feedback. Rod said that it gave him an idea for a song. Of course, when Dan saw the success of Tonight's the Night, it was one of those times when one slaps their forehead with a, "Why didn't I think of that?" But such is the creative process. It was not recorded in the UK either, but during the December of 1975, starting in Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Sheffield, Alabama. Then, after the main track was recorded there, the vocal overdubs were recorded during a multiple-day stay at the Caribou Ranch Studios in Colorado. The French-speaking female voice in the recording was from Swedish actress and model Britt Ekland, who was Stewart's girlfriend at the time. Not surprisingly, the song was initially banned by the BBC, and many radio stations elsewhere either refused to play it altogether or edited pieces out of it before putting it on the air. That didn't seem to make any difference in sales, though. It was a bona fide super hit. It landed in the top 10 on 9 international charts and made it to the number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 in the U.S. Not only did it make it there, but it stayed there at the top for 8 consecutive weeks, carrying its Hot 100 dominance all the way to 1977 and making it the longest number 1 charting single for Rod Stewart in his entire career. Sorry, Mom. Number 5. In the Summertime, Mungo Jerry. Release May 1970. Okay, first let's get this out of the way. Mungo Jerry isn't a guy. It was a British rock band. They charted 8 hits in the UK, but not so in the US, except for this one, which went to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was their first single, written by the band's lead singer, Ray Dorset, and he said in about 10 minutes, with a second-hand Fender Stratocaster during his day job at a Timex design lab. One has to wonder, what the heck did he do there to allow time to get a guitar and write a song? The group recorded it not long after they were formed in 1970. In the Summertime was a mega hit, making it to the top 10 on, get this, 22 international charts, and even more significantly, charting at number 1 on 20 of those. I have tried repeatedly to understand why this musical concoction went as high as it did on the charts, but there's simply no explaining it. The closest you can get to an explanation is that it's mental popcorn with no redeeming social value. By the way, in case you wondered what the sound in the middle of that song was, it was originally going to be a motorcycle, but they couldn't find a library tape of one at the Pi studio, so sound engineer Howard Barrow's Triumph sports car was recorded by producer Barry Murray outside of the Pi studio. The original song was rather short at 2 minutes, so the first half of the recording was simply repeated with a slightly different mix after the sports car sound effect to give the result more length. This is another one of those songs that just hangs around in your head long after it's over. How nice. Number 4. Brand New Key, Melanie. Released October 1971. I think that the reason I don't really like this song is because of the timbre of Melanie's voice. Designed to sound like a little girl, its timbre is, well, squeaky. Its lyrics really were inspired by a childhood episode when she was learning to skate. With her dad holding her up from behind, she did fine until she looked behind her to see that he was really not holding on to her any longer, and then she fell. That being the innocent origin of the lyrics, they came across as something entirely different, having somewhat lewd overtones regarding keys fitting into skates. Melanie claimed that, although there was certainly an implied Freudian reference, she really didn't intend the song to come across as a suggestive piece. She found that, after its release, people were also projecting all sorts of deep meanings into the lyrics. But as far as she was concerned, she wrote it, she recorded it, and then it was on its own. Brand New Key went to the top 10 on 11 international charts, among them being number 4 on the UK singles chart and number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Others couldn't resist doing a parody, though. In 1975, an entry named Combine Harvester by Irish songwriter Brendan O'Shaughnessy went to number 1 in Ireland. That song was then covered in the UK in 1976 by the Wurzels, who retitled it the Combine Harvester, and it made it to number 1 for 2 weeks in June of that year. Melanie Ann Safka Shekerick, who was a Woodstock Festival performer, died January 23rd, 2024. Number 3. Feelings, Morris Albert, released 1974. Morris Albert, whose real name is Mauricio Alberto Kaiserman, is a Brazilian singer-songwriter and, after its success in 1974, used Feelings as a title track to his first album in 1975. The song went to the top 10 level on 10 international charts, although it was unable to top any of them. It represented a true one-hit wonder, though, as Albert's only other charted single was Sweet Lovin' Man in 1976, which peaked at number 93. In spite of its legitimate popularity during the mid-70s, the syrupy ballad gained a reputation as a sappy lounge song, and after its fall from the charts, became repeatedly presented as such in comedy sketches. It was also the subject of a copyright infringement complaint by French songwriter Lulu Gastet, and he finally won the case, resulting in his name being included on the writing credits beginning in 1988. My personal prejudice against this song is that I played it for years at discos in the mid-70s, practically every night for slow dancing. Earplugs didn't help. Number 2, Muskrat Love, The Captain and Tennille, released September 1976. The song was written and originally recorded by Willis Allen Ramsey and entitled Muskrat Candlelight. He put it on his only album released in 1972. He also issued a single of it in 1972, but it failed to chart anywhere. The folk rock band America covered it in 1973, retitled as Muskrat Love. It was a sweet acoustic rendition, and it garnered a lackluster number 67 on the Hot 100. Enter the Captain and Tennille. They were both amazingly talented performers who met when a musical that Tony Tennille had co-written put out a call for a replacement keyboardist when it was booked at an LA venue. Keyboardist Daryl Dragon, who had picked up the name Captain Keyboard while working with the Beach Boys, answered the call. Eventually, the pair realized that they had synergy as an act and began playing the nightclub circuit, billing themselves as Captain and Tennille. Daryl was a keyboard wizard, and Tony Tennille had an angelic voice, plus a captivating girl-next-door appearance, adding to the appeal of the act. Soon after hearing the recording by America on their car radio, Tony suggested adding the song to their nightclub act, and they began playing it routinely after finding it to generate a very positive audience response. Fast forward to 1976. As fate would have it, they were one track short when producing their 1976 album Song of Joy, and made the decision to record their version of Muskrat Love, which included synthesizer sound effects, drafted by Daryl Dragon. By April of 76, 2 top 10 singles had already been released from the album: Lonely Night, Angel Face,
Tell me what am I going to do? 'Cause it's always been you.
and Shop Around.
My mama told me you better shop around.
But in spite of having no plans for more releases from the album, A&M Records then decided to issue Muskrat Love as a single based upon the unprecedented listener response to the album cut being played during the September of 76 by Madison, Wisconsin radio station WISM. It peaked in the top 5 in both Canadian and U.S. charts, being number 1 on the RPM Top Singles and on the Billboard Hot 100. The song appears to be quite polarizing to the public as well, with little middle ground. It's either love it or hate it. I take the latter stance, principally due to the corny synthesizer effects in it. They make my teeth itch. And now, number 1, Disco Duck, Rick Dees, released September 4th, 1976. I will stipulate that this is a novelty song, and a disco beat song as well. Got it, but it still qualifies for the list because 1, it was wildly popular, and 2, I was done hearing it halfway through the first time I heard it. This thing went to number 1 on the Hot 100, but that wasn't the end of it. It remained in the top 10 for 10 weeks and peaked in the top 10 internationally on 16 charts. What were you people thinking? Rick Dees, real name Rigdon Osmond Dees III, had been in radio since the 60s, starting at WGBG in Greensboro, North Carolina when he was still in high school, and was a DJ at AM station WMPS in Memphis at the time he wrote and recorded this tune. Rick was incapable of doing the duck voice, so the voice that you hear on the recording was performed by a guy named Kim Pruitt. And the recording is the only place that you'll hear him doing the voice as well. Rick hired a prior acquaintance named Michael Chesney to perform the song in live shows. One would think that Rick would have played the fool out of his own record at the radio station in which he worked. But that wasn't the case. And it wasn't because he didn't want to play it either. WMPS management told him that he could not play the song at all because it would be a conflict of interest. Unless it had something to do with station music format, this line of logic baffles me because the whole economic model of AM radio is to play songs to get ears to listen to ads. What were they thinking? In fact, people in Memphis, Tennessee didn't get to hear the song at all from any of the local stations at first anyway, because they didn't want to play the record that was recorded by a DJ working at a competing radio station. Not only could he not play it at the station in which he worked, the station management ended up firing the guy because he did nothing more than mention the song on the air one morning because it was almost a number one. That may not have been the best decision, because even after a mandatory hiatus, he was hired by a competing radio station in the area, call sign WHBQ. And they allowed him to play the song. I'll bet that was a tough Monday morning meeting at WMPS when they found out he was playing it on a competing station. Rick ended up getting a lot of media attention from Disco Duck, including an appearance on American Bandstand and some other shows of the same ilk. The song was even used in the movie Saturday Night Fever, but because of a decision made by Rick's manager to not include it on the movie soundtrack album, it may have been a rather unfortunate financial decision, because the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack album ended up selling over 40 million copies worldwide, and that would have been one big chunk of change. Anyway, the thing was a huge hit, and a lot of people liked it. I just wasn't one of them. This list isn't, of course, all of my least favorites from the decade, because I had no desire to make this a 2-hour video. But I do know that you undoubtedly have other songs from the 70s that simply rubbed you the wrong way, even though they were very popular. Please feel free to share the irritation by posting a comment. Meanwhile, I intend to remain here as a sounding board for you, no matter whether you share joy or anxiety. Happy listening. Hey guys, thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do me a favor and click on the like, thumbs up icon and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. You can also use comments to suggest video subject matter regarding pop music and pop music culture between the 1950s and the 1970s. A great thing that you can also do to support the channel and the Facebook page is just sharing the video with your friends. Just click on the arrow icon and pick the destination person and help us expand the audience. Speaking of supporting the channel, this would be a great time to subscribe on YouTube if you're not yet a subscriber, or if you're watching this on my companion Facebook page and not yet a follower, start following the Facebook page. It's easy and it's free, and it lets YouTube and Facebook know that you support the channel. Just click on the follow button on Facebook, or subscribe on the YouTube channel main page, or click on the big purple icon that's going to appear at the end of this video, and be sure to select the top notification bell on the drop-down menu that appears so that you will be notified whenever I post new content for the public. If you would like the opportunity to see the content on YouTube a few days earlier when it is viewable only to channel members, you can upgrade that subscription and become one. Just click on the join icon and follow the instructions. It's not a free thing to upgrade a YouTube channel membership, but it's as dirt cheap as YouTube would let me make it. Thanks again for watching.